I was working on England Arise, which is the story of the socialist conscientious objectors of World War I from Huddersfield, using Cyril Pearce's research from his book Conrad's in Conscience, and also the story of the radical women's movement of the time, and I got in touch with Ingrid about it.
And we met in the Tiled Cafe at Leeds. Now, I was working on German conscientious objectors and on women's resistance to war, and I was interested in how a theatre company was telling the story of resistance through personal accounts and getting an emotional engagement, which is quite different to the response I normally get from my lectures, and rather than just facts and figures. So we decided that we could work together on this project.
Meanwhile, in Devon, I was living in Devon and I was working at Dartington Hall. I was running a festival of peace which was centred around the work of Rabindranath Tagore, and in doing so I got in touch with the Anti-War Museum in Berlin, who had done an amazing exhibition produced by the Gandhi Information Centre and Christian Bartolf.
We put a funding proposal into Ignite and we were successful.
Hooray!
Hooray! And Ingrid came to see our play England Arise and didn't hate it.
Hooray!
And we visited Berlin, we met Christian and immersed ourselves in German attitudes to the war and realised how difficult it is to talk about the First War when the Second is so present.
We visited sites of resistance in Berlin, and especially the Anti-War Museum, which tells the story of Ernst Friedrich's war resistance. And it was really lovely to talk to...
I don't know if these timings are correct.
Yeah, they're not really, are they? It was really lovely to talk to his grandson, but his focus was all on Ernst Friedrich's resistance to Hitler, and this is what we found wherever we went, that there was much more interested in resistance to National Socialism.
We didn't know what to do next, but we found a story.
Which was all about mutiny and turnips.
Hooray!
We started looking into the story of the Kiel mutiny, where unhappy sailors started a revolution. And Kiel is a northern town, a little bit like Huddersfield, with a huge reputation. And we're going to stop the presentation.
No, we're just going to go back. I'm going to do mine from over here.
Okay.
How'd you go back?
Well.
There it is. Yeah, sorry, my timing's
Yes.
gone wrong.
The revolution in Kiel, which was basically around bread riots, basically as well. Kiel being a northern town, rather like Huddersfield, it has a theatre and active history society, and possibly we felt some untold stories around this revolution that would fit thematically with our play.
Now, apparently there were no women involved in the revolution, but my research contradicts this, and there were women involved in the revolution very much, and they actually set the ground for the revolutionary mood that allowed the sailors' mutiny to ignite a revolutionary or an uprising in Kiel that sparked the revolution of November 1918.
So basically, we found some stories of resistance to war. Hooray! We found
Hooray!
some women who were resisting war.
Hooray!
In Kiel, not Berlin. So we decided to go north and go up to Berlin. And so before we went, we contacted various people from the town, from the creative centres, and also from the kind of municipal archives. And off we went.
This chap here is Mr. Klaus Kuhl. He's the sort of Kiel version of Mr. Cyril Pearce. He conducted the research and interviewed all the main players, and we basically very quickly discovered that the word mutiny is not at all popular. It's deemed an illegal act, and they don't like to see and perceive it that way at all. They're ashamed of that. And also, the Kiel mutiny was also associated with Bolshevism, and that during the Cold War, this was very, very difficult for people in West Germany to believe. So since the war's come down, there's been quite a bit of change on that front.
Okay, and Germany's still ill at ease, we found, with the idea of revolution, but the story seems to be emerging that this revolution actually is a positive thing because it formed the basis of the European Union. We found Gertrud Volker was one woman we did find. Jude found the story of Gertrud Volker. Her memoirs were in the archive, but typically the archivist didn't even know he had them.
Great. Okay, so going to Kiel also gave us a great sense of the place because we could understand this is the river going right into the heart of the town. So the sailors were literally sailing right into the centre where the workers were working who were already organised. So when the sailors got off the ship who were angry about their maggoty turnips, they were there with the workers.
Suzanne, the lady in blue, took us on a tour of Kiel landmarks. There's a lot to commemorate with the revolution. Some of it not better than others, quite frankly. There's the football field there where the sailors marched to free the agitators who'd been arrested, and so on like that. And there's also the sculpture there, which was inspired by Ernst Toller's German expressionist play, The Fires, as well, which was first produced in this country in Manchester by Joan Littlewood prior to her theatre workshop.
There we go. So there's some interesting links there. So Ernst Toller wrote his play The Fires based on Kiel, but it was first produced in the north of England at the time. We also went to the theatre in Kiel where we met Daniel and his team, who were really interested in what we were talking about, but they clearly had their own ideas, one of which was to commission an opera to commemorate the revolution in 1918, 2018.
The centenary in a left-wing town with a left-wing administration, obviously they had their own agenda as to how they wanted to position Kiel at the heart of German democracy by telling the story of the revolution as the only positive thing, they said at one stage, to come out of the history of Kiel.
And yet a lot of other people in Kiel see the revolution as something to be ashamed of and not something to be proud of. There's a real strong current in German people not to break the law, basically, and there's still quite a lot of ambivalence about the actual revolution as to whether or not it was a good thing. And there's we have a sort of deliberate decision taken since the late 70s that the Aufstand, as they like to call it, the uprising, to be presented as a positive thing.
And what we'd like to do is find stories that celebrate, or what I would like to do is find stories that celebrate and place women at the centre stage where of course they belong, and to work in partnership with Kiel to be involved in international commemoration and reinterpretation of the events that took place there.
So we really feel like in Kiel there's lots of threads to follow. We'd like to do more archival research. We'd like to really find out about these untold stories of the people of Kiel, and really research more, maybe into Gertrude Volker and these other women, and create a piece in the future.
Yeah, we'd like to do a performance, a bilingual performance that explores the role of the women and also the roots of the revolution in Kiel, the uprising. We're going to get in touch with people called Jens now. When this is the Flender bunker, which is a disused bunker, which has actually been turned into, that was a disused bunker, that's been turned into a commemorative art space in Kiel. We're going to look into finding partners here in Britain. We're possibly going to talk to Home in Manchester, the new art space over there, as well, and obviously Leeds University, as well as partners that we are exploring, talking to in Kiel as well.
So what we want to do next is apply for follow-on funding from the HRC to challenge the perceived story of the end of the war, particularly in the UK, and get the story of peace, the story of women, and the story of German resistance to war out there to new audiences in 2018.
The end. And the other thing we're going to do is not create hostages to fortune by trying to do the whole thing in 5 minutes or 15 seconds per slide as well. Live and learn.
Thank you very much. Great demo of how hard it is.
Yes.
Has anybody got any questions?
We covered everything in 5 minutes.
We did, didn't we? That was...
Can you tell me how to have so much fun doing my research?
Oh, we're having a great time, aren't we?
Yeah,
We
it's
really
true.
are, I must say. And really that thing about experiencing a place, you know, when we were like, we'll go all the way up to Kiel, but actually to get there and feel the water going into the heart of the city. You know, when you think about Wilhelmshaven, where the sailors were kind of moored for basically the entire of World War I, but it's all offshore. They had like their own city. So you can understand why in Kiel, when they were literally coming right in to the heart,
Yeah.
but that experience has been really profound on me.
So going up to Kiel as well, we were calling our project Kiel 1918 The Mutiny. And only in the first chap we're sitting talking to actually says to us, the thing is, nobody here likes the word mutiny. They see that as illegal, it's criminal. They want to call it a revolution. So we got into the whole semantics of the word, you know, is what does mutiny, does that say something illegal? I'm not sure it does really to me, but it clearly does there. So we had to very quickly stop calling it mutiny
Yeah.
as
So
well, which had we not gone to Kiel, we would, you know,
I think the official position is it is an uprising with revolutionary tendencies, you know. And I was really excited because it had resistance to war, which I'm researching on, and it had the story of women's involvement in that resistance, because I see this story of peace during the First World War as an international story, and it's a story that's led by the activities on the international scene of the women. So actually going in there and finding these stories of women, especially, you know, being confirmed in the fact that there is a hidden history there. There's a woman, Gertrud Völker, who Jude found, who gave an eyewitness account of the revolutionary events. She was a trade unionist, she was involved in the SPD, so she wasn't just, you know, an inactive or a passive bystander. And the fact that this woman's memoirs were in the archive and the archivist had no idea that they were there and had never heard of her suggests that with a little bit more digging we'll be able to find some of these stories and bring them to the fore.
And it does suggest as well that both visits suggest, both in Berlin in particular as well, where the Second War has completely obliterated the first, and the impact of it all is absolutely everywhere, and obviously the history of the wall and division and so on, that there's an awful lot of the German side of this story unknown. The English, the British side of the conscientious objector movement is very powerfully researched. There's 20,000 COs known about, and there's a database and so on like that as well. The German anti-war movement is still something that I think there's a little bit of a national stigma about.
I don't think there's a stigma. I just think, you know, in my experience, if I mention resistance, German eyes light up and they say, we have lots of monuments to resistance. And I say, which war? And they say, oh yeah, Second World War.
Well, it's kind of the history of the First World War is only determined by responses to the Second World War.
Yeah, but I think I naively thought that we would go to Germany and I would say, you know, we've got this project, we're going to tell the story of German resistance to the First World War, a positive story and something that I thought people would be interested in. But we found out that in Berlin, certainly not really. You know, sort of polite interest, but no more than that, and no desire to take it further. Whereas when we went to Kiel, because of their particular political affiliation and their desire to put Kiel on the map by telling this story of the revolution that brought democracy to Germany, that ended the war, and that laid the foundations for the European Union and for, you know, the peace that we enjoy now, started in Kiel, then we were pushing at open doors there.
And also exciting for us creatively, because when we did our England Arise piece, it was about resistance to World War I, but they were kind of untold stories. We don't know about the community of socialist conscientious objectors and the massive amount of women who were supporting them, and the fact that it was entire communities in Huddersfield and West Yorkshire who were standing up against the war. It's still not kind of the main narrative in this country. And so to go to Germany and then again be pushing and saying, what is the untold story? What's the narrative you're not talking about? That's what we're interested in. Because I think there's the main kind of political one that they say, this is how it started or ended. Yeah, thank you very much.
So just a quick question, I just wondered, is this the first time on both sides that as a theatre company you work with an academic and as an academic you work with a theatre company? Is that something done?
Well, you've worked with Cyril Pearce, haven't you?
With the Venerable Cyril Pearce, Huddersfield's favourite son, on England Arise, and we also worked with Jill Diddington, who wrote a very important book called Rebel Girls about the working class women in the suffrage movement too. It's the first time we've probably spent a lot of research time in the first place, and actually just listening to Ingrid talk about her great joy of spending time in archives and things like that, you realise just the level of groundwork to be done as well. So.
But I think working with Ingrid as well, it's like you can kind of say something and then all of a sudden you've got this whole world that Ingrid can just kind of open up for you. She knows what the people were like, what was going on, what they were saying, and from a tiny little idea, all of a sudden a world kind of opens, and that's what's been really exciting for me. It's not just Ingrid's academic and knows where the references are. Actually, Ingrid can paint this beautiful picture that I think really excites us as theatre makers as well. It's been a really great relationship.
And it's my first time working with a theatre company, but I'm really excited about having seen England Arise, to realise that this story, which for me, I mean, I do give public lectures on it, they're reasonably well received and all the rest of it, but it can only go so far. Whereas seeing the stories on stage, there's an emotional engagement there, and also there's a lot of humour as well, so it's an engaging, accessible, theatrical experience that also leaves you with the message of, you know, the humanity of these conscientious objectors. So you've got the bigger picture and the smaller individual personal story as well, working hand in hand in ways that rarely come off when you're giving a lecture,
And
really.
that's what this is about, really, taking the academic research and finding ways to make it, you know, accessible, digestible, and so forth.
And work as a drama
Yeah.
too.
And find nice cake shops for Ingrid.
Yeah, cake.
Very important.
Very important for any research project.
Addicted to cake.
It's cake fueled
Beer for
research.
me, cake for Ingrid.
Thank you, Beth.
And you have no.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.